Hi guys, welcome to the fourth video. In this lesson, we're going to talk about one of the most important concepts tested in the SAT, punctuation. Now in the SAT, there are two fundamental punctuation questions being tested. The first is called parallel punctuation, and the second is called comma splice. In this video, we're going to focus on the parallel punctuation part first. Before we begin, let us review what we've learned so far. First, we do not always erase the information between two commas. Now, we only erase information between two commas when it is a modifier. And remember the rule. When it's a modifier, we can use comma, comma, dash, dash, or brackets. Basic number 2, understand that in English language, the same word can be used differently. Basic number 3, every sentence has a subject and a verb. Remember these three rules when solving punctuation questions. So here we go. Now, parallel punctuation is really simple. Rule number 1, there cannot be just one comma between a subject and a verb. Between a subject and a verb, there cannot be just one comma. There has to be either 0 or 2 or more. For example, Dan, who loves Jane, lives in Canada. If the subject is Dan and the verb is lives, between Dan and lives, you need to have either 0 comma or 2 commas. Now, having more than 2 commas, for example 3 or 4 comma is possible, but to simplify things, let's just remember as 0 or 2 for now. Rule number 2. The punctuation marks surrounding the modifier must be parallel, meaning if you open with a comma, close with a comma. If you open with a dash, you close with a dash. Simple, right? Now, we're going to apply this concept in the official writing questions. Now, before we begin, I'm going to be using official SAT questions, and I don't know if this is violation of any copyright, but I was told that for educational purposes, you're allowed to reproduce the questions. However, if I'm wrong and this is problematic, please let me know and I'll change the questions. The first question on the screen is from official SAT number 2, question 35. Remember, do not look at the answer choices, and our grammatical approach is to always find the subject and the verb. So I'm going to read out the sentence. Planned obsolescence, a practice whereby products are designed to have a limited period of usefulness, has been a cornerstone of manufacturing strategy for the past 80 years. So what is the subject and the verb of the sentence? The subject is planned obsolescence, and the verb is has been. Now, between the subject and the verb, how many commas do you see? At the moment, there are 2 commas. This means that there's no grammatical problem. Now, we will look at answer choice B, C, and D. What will happen when we choose B, C, or D? It will violate the most important concept in the SAT, parallel punctuation. Remember, between a subject and a verb, you can only have 0 or 2 commas. So the answer is A. Now, let's move on to the second question. This is from official test 7, question 43. And in my experience, about 90% of the students get this question wrong. But if you have the fundamentals down, it should come easy. Let's read out the sentence out loud. Kevin and Jack describe a more likely scenario. Most people who heard the broadcast understood they were listening to a piece of fiction, but some, being influenced by the sensationalized news coverage afterwards, later remember being more afraid than they had been. So what is the subject and the verb of the sentence? Many students, well most students in fact, pick answer choice D. And the reason is, they believe the verb is influence and the subject is some. And between some and influence there are 0 commas, right? However, you have to understand that the influence is not a verb. Do you remember a fundamental? In English language, the same word can be used differently. Let's compare the 2 different sentences in the screen. First sentence, she influenced him. The second sentence, the man influenced by the woman changed. Now, what is the subject and the verb of the first sentence? It's easy, right? She influenced. What about the second sentence though? The subject is the man, but you have to understand the verb is not influence. Rather, the verb of the sentence is changed, and the main idea is that the man changed. So what is influenced? Well, influenced is a modifier describing the man. What kind of man? The man influenced by the woman. So do you understand that the same word can be used differently? In the first sentence, the word influence is used as a verb. But in the second sentence, the word influence is used as a modifier. Now, if we go back to our question, you have to understand that the word influence is not a verb. So what is the verb of the sentence? I'm going to read out the sentence again, starting from the word some. Some being influenced by the sensationalized news coverage after or later remembered being more afraid. The verb is remembered. And the main idea here is that some people remembered. And between the subject and the verb, how many commas do you see? At the moment, there's one comma between subject and the verb. So what is our answer? Well, parallel punctuation states that you gotta have either 0 comma or 2 commas, right? So the answer choice is going to be either B or C, but B will have another sentence inside a modifier and it's unnecessary, so the answer is C. This is called parallel punctuation, so remember, between a subject and a verb, you're either going to have 0 or 2 commas or dash.